It's funny how someone can share your bed for 8 years but never really see you. I adjust my sleek charcoal blazer, smoothing out non-existent wrinkles as I stare at my reflection in the elevator's mirrored wall. The numbers tick upward. 37, 38, 39, each one bringing me closer to the moment I've simultaneously dreaded and anticipated for 3.5 years. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. Today, Nathan Collins will finally see me. Not as the struggling wife he abandoned with a mountain of debt. Not as the financial failure he claimed I was destined to be, but as the woman who now owns the company he's desperately trying to save. The elevator chimes softly as it reaches the 42nd floor of Summit Capital's gleaming Seattle headquarters. I take a deep breath, center myself, and watch the doors slide open to reveal the executive reception area where a young assistant sits behind a pristine desk. "Good morning," I say, my voice calm despite the thundering in my chest. "Olivia Parker for the board meeting." The confusion on his face is immediate. I'm not on his list. I'm not supposed to be here. But before he can form a response, the heavy mahogany doors to the boardroom swing open, and there stands Marcus Harrington, Nathan's longtime friend and board member. His eyes widen with recognition, then narrow with suspicion. "Olivia, what are you doing here?" "I'm here for the acquisition meeting," I reply simply, extending the leather portfolio that contains documentation he can't possibly be prepared for. "Shall we?" The moment hangs between us, tense and electric. Behind him, I can see the boardroom table surrounded by men in expensive suits, all turning toward the commotion. And there, at the far end, is Nathan, rising slowly from his chair, his face a perfect canvas of disbelief. 3.5 years ago, he walked out of our apartment with his suitcases and ambition, leaving me with nothing but $97,000 in credit card debt, and his parting words, "Some people are meant to build empires, Liv. Others just aren't cut out for greatness." He was right about one thing. Some people are meant to build empires. He just didn't realize which one of us it would be. The rain was relentless that night, drumming against our apartment windows like an anxious heartbeat. I sat at our small kitchen table, spreadsheets scattered before me, trying to make sense of the financial disaster Nathan had left in his wake. Credit card statements, overdue notices, loan agreements, all bearing his grandiose plans and my trusting signature. "You should have known better, Olivia," I whispered to myself, echoing the words my mother had spoken just hours earlier when I'd broken down and called her. It wasn't the comfort I'd hoped for, but perhaps it was the wake-up call I needed. Years into our marriage, Nathan had convinced me to co-sign on a series of foolproof investments: a restaurant franchise, an import business, a tech startup that never quite started up. Each venture more ambitious than the last, each failure more devastating. I'd been raised to believe in supporting your spouse's dreams, to be the wind beneath their wings. No one had warned me about what happens when those wings lead straight into a financial hurricane. I was 32 years old, an accountant at a mid-sized firm with a decent salary that had always gone toward our bigger future, Nathan's phrase for the empire he was certain we would build together. Now I was staring at $97,000 of debt, a depleted savings account, and the dawning realization that the "we" in his grand plans had always been conditional. The text message came at 11:42 p.m. "Staying at Marcus's again tonight. Need space to think. We'll talk soon." We had already talked 3 days earlier, when he'd informed me he'd accepted a position at Summit Capital, a prestigious investment firm that would finally give him the platform he deserved. The position was in Seattle. We lived in Portland. When I asked about us, about our home, about our life together, He'd looked at me with something between pity and irritation. "You don't understand how these opportunities work, Liv. They don't wait for people to get comfortable with change." I picked up my phone, my finger hovering over his message. 3 days of space. 3 days while I discovered just how thoroughly he'd entangled my financial future with his failures. 3 days of crying, of panic attacks, of sleepless nights, calculating how many decades it would take to pay off this debt on my salary alone. I set the phone down without responding. Something cold and clarifying was crystallizing in my chest, replacing the hollow ache that had lived there since he'd first started staying late at networking events 6 months ago. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 4 years. Instead, I met with a financial advisor who examined my situation with clinical detachment. "These are significant liabilities," she said, her expression professionally neutral, "but not insurmountable with the right strategy. First, we need to determine which debts are legally yours versus jointly held." I nodded, taking notes with the same precision I'd once applied to tracking Nathan's business expenses. "And I should probably consider bankruptcy, right?" The advisor, Eleanor Wilson, according to the plaque on her desk, leaned back in her chair. For the first time, something other than professional courtesy animated her features. "Ms. Parker, bankruptcy is certainly an option, but before we go nuclear, let me ask you something." She removed her glasses, studying me with unexpected intensity. "What's your relationship with money? Not your husband's relationship, yours." The question caught me off guard. I'm an accountant. I'm good with numbers, with budgets. I've always been careful, except... I gestured vaguely at the paperwork between us. "Except when it came to supporting his ventures," she finished for me. "That's not uncommon, but I'm more interested in how you see money fundamentally. As a tool? A safety net? A scorecard?" I considered this. "Honestly, I've always seen it as stability, security." I gave a bitter laugh. Clearly, I've failed at that. Eleanor shook her head. "I don't think you failed at anything. I think you've been operating under someone else's financial philosophy." She slid a notepad across the desk. "This is going to sound strange, but humor me. If money could talk, specifically your money, what would it say it wants?" I stared at the blank page, about to dismiss the exercise as New Age nonsense. But something made me pick up the pen. What would my money say? Not Nathan's money. Not our money, but mine. After a moment, I wrote, "I want to create safety for people who've been left with nothing." Eleanor read my words and smiled. "Ms. Parker, I think we should talk about options beyond bankruptcy. In fact, I have a proposition for you." That meeting with Eleanor changed everything. Instead of filing for bankruptcy, I made a different kind of filing, for divorce and for the incorporation of a new business entity. With Eleanor's connections and a small investment group she assembled who believed in my vision, I founded Reclaim Financial. The concept was simple yet revolutionary. A platform that used AI to analyze debt patterns, negotiate with creditors, and create personalized pathways to financial recovery. What made it different from other financial services was that it was designed by someone who understood the emotional trauma of financial betrayal, not just the numbers. The first version was essentially built to solve my own problems, working through my divorce proceedings while simultaneously dealing with creditors. I coded basic algorithms at night after returning to my accounting job during the day. My tiny studio apartment, the only place I could afford after leaving our shared home, became command central for what I then called Project Lifeline. Maya, my best friend since college, was the first to recognize the broader potential. "Olivia, do you realize how many people are in the exact situation you are in?" she said one night, 6 months into my new life. We were sitting on my secondhand couch, takeout containers balanced on our laps, as I showed her the program I'd built. "This isn't just your financial recovery plan. This could help thousands of people. I shook my head. It's not sophisticated. Enough. The big financial firms have teams of developers, millions in infrastructure. But they don't have your perspective, Maya insisted. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. They haven't sat at a kitchen table at midnight, terrified about how they'll make minimum payments on 10 different credit cards. The conviction in her voice gave me pause. Even if you're right, I'd need resources, connections. Start small. Start with people like us. Maya was already pulling out her laptop. I know at least 5 friends in crushing debt right now. Let me be your guinea pig, then we'll expand. You need real-world data anyway, right? To improve your algorithms? She was right. What began as 5 friends soon became 20, then 100 as word spread through social media about the debt whisperer, who could negotiate reductions and create manageable repayment plans when all hope seemed lost. I started a podcast called Reclaiming Your Financial Future as a way to reach more people, never showing my face, adopting the pseudonym The Reclaimer. Each episode combined practical financial advice with the emotional support I had wished for during my darkest days. The comments section filled with stories that mirrored my own, creating a community of survivors rather than victims. What I didn't know then was that among my listeners were key players in the financial technology sector, intrigued by this mysterious voice offering a new perspective on debt recovery, or that one particular listener would eventually bring everything full circle in ways I couldn't have imagined. 1 year and 4 months after Nathan walked out, I received an email from him. By then, I had moved to Seattle myself, not following him, but following Eleanor's connections to the city's vibrant tech industry. Reclaim Financial had secured its first round of legitimate funding, and we had actual office space in a co-working facility downtown. Liv, his message began, as if no time had passed, as if he hadn't left me drowning in his financial wreckage. Heard through Marcus that you're in Seattle now. Surprising move for you. Hope you've landed on your feet after everything. I'm doing well at Summit, on track for senior management within the year. They recognize ambition here. BTW. Came across your little debt blog or podcast or whatever it is. Cute project. Always knew you were good with budgets and small-scale stuff. If you need connections to actual financial advisors for your followers, let me know. I know everyone who matters in this city now. No hard feelings about how things ended. We wanted different things. Some people are built for the big leagues, others for the minors. That's just life. Nathan. I saved the email but didn't respond. Instead, I printed it out and pinned it to the corkboard in my office, right next to our growing user metrics and the business plan Eleanor had helped me refine. Maya found me staring at it later that day. Wow, she said, reading over my shoulder. He really doesn't get it, does he? No, I replied, a strange calm settling over me. But he will. The contrast between Nathan's dismissive, cute project and the reality of what Reclaim was becoming grew more stark with each passing month. While he climbed the corporate ladder at Summit Capital, a traditional investment firm increasingly criticized for its failure to innovate, Reclaim was capturing a market segment no one had properly served before. We weren't just helping people manage debt. We were transforming financial trauma into financial empowerment. Our user base grew from thousands to hundreds of thousands. Our AI systems became more sophisticated, learning from each success story, adapting to different creditor tactics, finding legal loopholes and leverage points that individuals would never discover on their own. Eleanor's investment group was joined by larger venture capital firms. Maya officially became our chief operating officer, bringing her organizational brilliance to what had begun as my personal survival mechanism. We hired a team, moved to better offices, and started appearing on fintech companies to watch lists. Through it all, I maintained my anonymity. The reclaimer had a voice, but no public face. On paper, I was the founder and CEO of Reclaim Financial, but I avoided industry events, declined interviews, and let Maya be our public representative when necessary. It wasn't just about avoiding potential run-ins with Nathan, though that was certainly part of it. It was about building something that wasn't tied to personality or charisma, but to genuine value and results. 2 years after Nathan's email, Reclaim Financial was valued at $340 million with over 2 million users, and a revolutionary AI-driven platform that had expanded from debt management to comprehensive financial wellness. We had helped people reclaim over $1, $2 billion from predatory lenders, negotiated settlements that saved our users hundreds of millions, and built educational tools that were being licensed by community colleges nationwide. That's when I learned that Summit Capital was in trouble. Daniel Chen, our corporate attorney, and the man who had gradually become more than just a professional advisor to me, arrived at my apartment one evening with the news. "They're looking for a buyer," he said, settling onto my couch, loosening his tie in that way that still made my heart skip, despite my best professional intentions. "Or a significant capital injection. They've overextended on some traditional investments and completely missed the digital transformation of the industry." I poured us both a glass of wine, my mind already racing ahead. "Are they approaching other firms?" Daniel nodded. "Several, but none that would be particularly interested in their outdated infrastructure or aging client base." He gave me a meaningful look. "Except, perhaps for one." I sat beside him, our shoulders touching lightly. "We're not in the investment business. We're debt resolution and financial wellness." "For now," he countered. "But you've talked about expansion, about wanting to create a full-spectrum financial services platform. Their established banking relationships and regulatory approvals would save you years of red tape." I sipped my wine, thinking about the symmetry, the perfect narrative arc it would create. Nathan's there, Senior VP of Market Strategy now, according to his LinkedIn. It would be complicated. Daniel studied me carefully. Is that a reason to avoid it, or a reason to consider it? The question hung between us, layered with meaning beyond just business strategy. "I'm not interested in revenge," I said finally. "That's not what Reclaim is about." "No," Daniel agreed. "It's about creating a financial system that serves people instead of exploiting them. And sometimes, to change a system, you have to acquire it first." 3 days later, I instructed our corporate development team to begin a confidential assessment of Summit Capital's potential acquisition. What they found confirmed Daniel's initial report: a company with valuable licenses and relationships, but rapidly declining relevance in a digital-first financial world. The irony wasn't lost on me. Nathan had left me for a bigger future at a company that was, in many ways, already in the past. The negotiations took place through intermediaries. Summit knew only that a successful fintech company was interested in their assets. They had no idea who was behind the offer. I insisted on complete confidentiality until the final stages, when in-person meetings would become necessary. As the deal progressed, I maintained my daily routine, managing our growing team, refining our systems, continuing my anonymous podcast. But at night, alone in my apartment overlooking the Seattle skyline, I allowed myself to imagine the moment when everything would be revealed. It wasn't about seeing Nathan's face, I told myself. It was about completing a circle, about transforming what had begun as personal catastrophe into professional triumph. The universe had a poetry to it sometimes, arrangements of circumstance too perfect to ignore. 3.5 years after Nathan had walked out, leaving me with crushing debt and shattered confidence, the acquisition was ready to be finalized. The terms were generous but firm. Summit Capital would maintain its name and client relationships, but its operations would be fully integrated into Reclaim's digital framework. Their executive team would remain in place during the transition, with adjustments to follow based on performance and cultural fit. What Summit didn't yet know was the identity of their acquirer. They had dealt with Maya and our acquisition team, with Daniel and our financial analysts. The final signing and announcement were scheduled for their quarterly board meeting, a meeting to which I would finally show myself. The night before, Maya came over with champagne and takeout, just like in the early days when my empire consisted of a laptop and a desperate plan. "Nervous?" she asked, pouring bubbly into my favorite mug since I still hadn't bothered to buy proper champagne flutes. "Terrified," I admitted. "But not about the business part. The deal makes sense. The integration plan is solid. The financials work for everyone." "It's seeing him," Maya nodded. "Facing the person who thought you'd never amount to anything." I sank into my couch, suddenly questioning everything. Is that why I'm doing this? Some elaborate, expensive form of look at me now? Because that's not what Reclaim stands for. Maya sat beside me. "Olivia, you're acquiring Summit because it's the right move for Reclaim's growth strategy. The fact that your ex happens to work there is just cosmic justice." She clinked her mug against mine. Sometimes the universe delivers the perfect ending all on its own. "Or beginning," I said quietly, thinking of all that still lay ahead. "I have a responsibility to our team, to our users. This can't be personal." "It doesn't have to be personal to be satisfying," Maya pointed out. "Just promise me one thing." "What's that?" "Wear the blue suit tomorrow. The one that makes you look like you could buy and sell the whole city without breaking a sweat." I laughed, some of the tension finally leaving my body. Deal. The morning of the board meeting, I stood in front of my closet, my hand hovering between the blue suit Maya had suggested and my more conservative black one. After a moment's hesitation, I chose the blue. Not for Nathan, not for anyone else, but for the woman who had rebuilt herself from financial ruin, who had turned personal devastation into a platform that helped millions. I took a car service to Summit's headquarters, watching Seattle's familiar landscape slide past my window. The rain had cleared overnight, leaving the city washed clean and gleaming in unexpected sunshine. A good omen, perhaps. As the elevator carried me up to the 42nd floor, I thought about the journey that had brought me here. The nights spent crying over spreadsheets. The days filled with anxiety as I fielded calls from creditors. The gradual rebuilding of my confidence as Reclaim grew from concept to thriving enterprise. Nathan had been right about one thing. Some people are meant to build empires. He just hadn't recognized that I was one of them. And now, as the elevator doors slide open and I step into Summit Capital's executive reception area, I'm about to make sure he never forgets it. The boardroom falls silent as I step through the doorway. 12 pairs of eyes track my movement, but I focus only on the far end of the mahogany table where Nathan sits, his expression transitioning from confusion to recognition to something I can only describe as existential panic. "Ms. Parker," says Carl Donovan, Summit Capital's CEO, rising from his chair with visible bewilderment. "I'm afraid there's been some misunderstanding. This is a closed board meeting regarding our acquisition," I finish for him, my voice steady despite the adrenaline coursing through me. "Yes, I'm aware. I'm here representing Reclaim Financial." A murmur ripples through the room. Summit's board members exchange glances, some puzzled, others alarmed. Nathan remains frozen, his knuckles white against the dark wood of the table. "I believe you've been in discussions with my team for the past 7 weeks," I continue, setting my portfolio on the table and removing a sleek tablet. "I'm Olivia Parker, founder and CEO of Reclaim Financial." Carl Donovan's professional mask slips for just a moment. "You're the Reclaimer?" I offer a small smile. "Among other things." Marcus Harrington finds his voice. "This is impossible. Reclaim Financial is run by me," I interject calmly. "I founded it 3 years ago. Our representatives have been completely transparent about our interest in Summit Capital. The only detail withheld was my personal identity, which I'm revealing now as we move to the final phase of our agreement. Nathan finally speaks, his voice tight with controlled fury. "Liv, what is this? Some kind of joke?" I don't look at him directly, instead addressing the entire board. "Far from it, Mr. Collins. This is sound business strategy. Summit Capital has valuable banking relationships and regulatory approvals that will accelerate Reclaim's expansion into full-service financial wellness. In return, our digital infrastructure and 2 million strong user base will help Summit reverse its declining market position." I tap my tablet, and the wall screen behind me illuminates with our presentation. Shall we proceed with the terms as negotiated? What follows is 2 hours of detailed discussion, pointed questions, and careful scrutiny of the acquisition terms. I navigate each concern with the precision of someone who has spent years preparing for exactly this moment. Not out of vengeance, but out of vision. Throughout the presentation, I feel Nathan's gaze burning into me. But I address him only as necessary, as one executive to another. When we break for lunch, he corners me by the private elevator. "What the hell are you playing at, Olivia?" he hisses, close enough that I can smell the familiar sandalwood cologne he still wears. "You think you can just waltz in here and take over my company?" I step back slightly, maintaining professional distance. "First, it's not your company. Nathan, you're a senior vice president, not the owner. Second, this isn't personal. It's business. Something you taught me to separate quite effectively." His jaw tightens. "This is about the divorce, isn't it? About the debt. I told you I needed that money for investments that would set us both up for life." "No," I say, surprised by the genuine calm in my voice. "This is about Reclaim Financial acquiring a company with complementary assets. The fact that you work here is incidental." "Incidental?" He laughs harshly. "You expect me to believe that? You disappear for years, then suddenly you're some tech CEO buying the company I've spent 3 years building my career in? That's one hell of a coincidence, Liv." The elevator arrives with a soft chime. I step inside, then turn to face him. "You know what the difference is between coincidence and irony, Nathan? Coincidence is chance. Irony is poetry." I press the button for the lobby. "And for the record, I didn't disappear. You left." The doors close on his stunned face, and I let out the breath I've been holding. My hands tremble slightly as I reach for my phone to text Maya. "Phase 1 complete. He's rattled. How are things on your end?" She responds immediately. "Financials all greenlit. Legal docs ready for final signatures." "Also," Daniel called. Twice. "I think someone's worried about you." I smile despite the tension of the morning. Daniel had offered to come to the meeting for moral support, but I'd declined. This moment, facing my past while securing my company's future, was something I needed to do alone. When I returned to the boardroom after a quick lunch with Eleanor, who insisted on being nearby just in case, the atmosphere has shifted. The initial shock has been replaced by resigned acceptance from most board members who have had time to review the financials more thoroughly. The deal is sound. Their company is struggling. Pride is expensive when shareholders are losing confidence. Only Nathan maintains his hostility, though he's careful to frame his objections in business terms rather than personal ones. Reclaim's technology is unproven at our scale, he argues during the afternoon session. Their user base is primarily middle to lower income individuals dealing with debt recovery, not high net worth clients requiring sophisticated investment strategies. I nod, acknowledging his point. That's precisely why this acquisition makes sense, Mr. Collins. Summit has the high net worth relationships but lacks technological innovation. Reclaim has cutting-edge financial AI but would take years to establish the regulatory framework Summit already possesses. I gesture to the projected figures. Together, We create a full-spectrum financial services company that serves everyone from debt recovery clients to wealth management portfolios. And what happens to current summit executives in this new structure? This comes from Anita Vasquez, the only female board member besides Eleanor, who recused herself from voting due to her early investment in Reclaim. All executives maintain their positions during the transition period, I explain. After 6 months, we'll evaluate leadership, roles based on performance, cultural fit, and strategic alignment. Nathan's expression darkens. He understands the subtext. His position isn't guaranteed, unlike the rest of the board who will retain their seats. Not because he's my ex-husband, but because his role as SVP of Market Strategy has produced measurably declining results for 3 consecutive quarters. By 4 o'clock, the votes are tallied. The acquisition is approved 11-1, with Nathan as the lone dissenter. Legal documents are signed, handshakes exchanged, and a press release scheduled for the following morning. As the meeting concludes, Carl Donovan approaches me with the shell-shocked look of someone who has just witnessed their company change hands. "I suppose congratulations are in order, Ms. Parker," he says, extending his hand. "I admit I had my doubts when your team first approached us, but your presentation today was illuminating." I shake his hand firmly. "Thank you, Mr. Donovan. I believe this partnership will benefit both organizations tremendously. Your leadership during the transition will be invaluable." "And after the transition?" he asks, the question hanging heavy between us. "That depends on how well we work together," I reply honestly. "But I value experience and institutional knowledge. My goal isn't to dismantle Summit, but to help it evolve." He nods, seemingly satisfied for now. As he moves away to speak with other board members, Nathan approaches, his expression unreadable. "We need to talk," he says quietly. "Not here, not as executives." I consider refusing, but curiosity wins out. "Fine. The coffee shop across the street, 30 minutes. He nods once and walks away, his shoulders rigid with tension. Outside, Seattle has delivered its trademark meteorological mood swing. The morning sunshine has given way to a gentle rain that beads on my suit jacket as I cross the street to Cascadia Coffee, a small independent cafe where I've spent countless hours developing Reclaim's business model. I select a table in the corner, order my usual lavender latte, and wait. Part of me wonders if Nathan will actually show up or if pride will keep him away. 15 minutes later, the bell above the door chimes, and he enters, scanning the room, until he spots me. Rain has darkened his normally perfect hair, making him look younger, more like the man I first fell in love with in our college economics class. He orders at the counter, then makes his way to my table, removing his wet jacket before sitting down. "So," he begins, wrapping his hands around his coffee mug, "Reclaim Financial. You built that after you left me with $97,000 in debt?" I supply. "Yes." He winces slightly. "I didn't think of it as leaving you with the debt. I thought of it as moving on from a failing situation." "The situation didn't fail, Nathan. You abandoned it. There's a difference." He takes a sip of his coffee, avoiding my gaze. "How did you do it? Build a company worth enough to acquire Summit? That's not the Olivia I knew." The question should sting, but instead, it clarifies something I've felt but couldn't articulate until now. You're right. I'm not the Olivia you knew. Because the Olivia you knew was only allowed to exist in relation to you, your dreams, your ambitions, your definition of success. I lean forward slightly. When you left, I had to figure out who I was without all that. Turns out, I'm someone who builds things that help people. He's quiet for a moment, studying me with new eyes. The debt management platform, that came from dealing with what I left behind? I nod. Initially, I created the first version to organize my own financial recovery. Then I realized how many other people needed the same thing. And now you own the company I work for. He shakes his head in disbelief. What happens to me in this new arrangement? Are you firing me? Is that what this is about? This may be difficult for you to comprehend, Nathan, but not everything is about you. I set my mug down carefully. Your position will be evaluated like everyone else's. If your performance metrics justify your continued employment, you'll have a place at the combined company. Under you, he says flatly. Yes, under me. Is that a problem? He laughs without humor. Is that a problem? My ex-wife, who I left, because she lacked ambition, is now my boss. No. Why would that be a problem? You didn't leave because I lacked ambition, I correct him. You left because my ambition didn't center you. There's a difference. Nathan stares at me, startled by this perspective. Before he can respond, my phone buzzes with an incoming call from Maya. I check the screen briefly. I need to take this, I tell him, rising from the table. The transition team is meeting in an hour to discuss next steps. As SVP of Market Strategy, your presence would be valuable if you choose to participate constructively. He remains seated, looking up at me with an expression I can't quite decipher. I'll be there, he says finally. This is still my career, regardless of who signs the checks. I nod and step away to take Maya's call, leaving Nathan contemplating his coffee and, perhaps, the ironic twist his life has taken. Tell me everything, Maya demands when I answer. The board vote was the easy part. How was the face-to-face with Nathan? I move toward the windows, watching rain create patterns on the glass. Surprisingly human, I admit. He's shocked, of course, probably angry beneath the surface, but mostly just trying to process how completely the tables have turned. Are you okay? Her voice softens with genuine concern. This can't be easy, no matter how satisfying the corporate karma might be. I consider the question honestly. I'm lighter than I expected to feel. For 3 years, he's been this shadow in my mind, the person who thought I wasn't enough. Facing him today and seeing the recognition in his eyes when he realized what I've built. It doesn't change the past, but it does change its power over me. That's my girl, Maya says, and I can hear her smile through the phone. Now get ready for the transition meeting. The team is assembling at our office. Daniel's brought in. Dinner for everyone. He thought we might be celebrating tonight. I glance back at Nathan, still sitting at the table, staring into his coffee cup. I'll be there soon, I tell Maya. And yes, I think celebration is definitely in order. The next 2 weeks are a whirlwind of integration planning, press interviews, and organizational restructuring. The business media loves the story. Innovative fintech startup acquires established but struggling investment firm. Most coverage focuses on the technological and market implications, though a few more investigative pieces note the personal connection between Summit's SVP and Reclaim's founder. Financial Phoenix: How Olivia Parker Rose from Personal Debt. To acquire ex-husband's firm, reads one particularly dramatic headline. I decline to comment on the personal aspects, steering all interviews toward the business rationale and future vision instead. Nathan, to his credit, maintains professional composure during transition meetings. He contributes meaningfully to discussions about client retention and marketing strategies for the combined entity. If others notice the tension between us, they're diplomatic enough not to mention it. It's during the 3rd week post-acquisition that he appears at my office door late one evening. Most of the staff has gone home, but I'm still reviewing integration documents, my desk illuminated by a single lamp against the darkening Seattle skyline. Do you have a minute? He asks, hovering at the threshold. I gesture to the chair across from my desk. What can I help you with, Nathan? He sits down, placing a folder between us. I've been analyzing our marketing approach for the wealth management division. There's an opportunity I think we're missing. For the next 20 minutes, he outlines a surprisingly insightful strategy for bridging Reclaim's debt management clients to Summit's investment services as their financial situations improve. It's thoughtful work that acknowledges both companies' strengths without ego or territorialism. "This is good," I say when he finishes. "Really good, actually. Why haven't you mentioned this in the transition meetings?" He hesitates. "I wanted your perspective first. The dynamics in those meetings are complicated. Because of our history," I acknowledge. "Because some people are waiting for me to fail," he corrects me. "They expect the ex-husband to sabotage the ex-wife's company or to be too proud to adapt. I'm trying to demonstrate that I'm more professional than that." I study him for a moment, seeing glimpses of the ambitious, creative man I once admired, before his ambition curdled into something more selfish. "I appreciate that," I tell him honestly, "and this strategy has merit. Let's present it together at tomorrow's meeting." Relief flickers across his features. "Thank you." As he stands to leave, he pauses. "Olivia, I owe you an apology. Not just for the debt, though that's certainly part of it, but for underestimating you, for not seeing what you were capable of. The apology is unexpected, and I take a moment to consider it." "Thank you for saying that," I reply carefully. "But I don't need your validation now any more than I needed it then." He nods, accepting this. "I know. I just wanted to acknowledge that I was wrong about a lot of things." He moves toward the door, then turns back. "Your office is impressive, by the way. Much better view than mine." Despite myself, I smile. Perks of being the CEO. After he leaves, I walk to the window, gazing out at the glittering city below. Seattle looks different from the 50th floor, smaller in some ways, more expansive in others. 3.5 years ago, I was crying at my kitchen table, drowning in debt and despair. Now I'm here, having transformed personal catastrophe into professional triumph. But as satisfying as Nathan's apology and acknowledgement might be, they're not the victory I cherish most. The real win is in the emails I receive daily from Reclaim users, people who, like me, found themselves financially devastated and managed to rebuild their lives using tools I helped create. My phone buzzes with a text from Daniel. "Still at the office? The car's waiting downstairs whenever you're ready." I smile, gathering my things. Tonight, we're celebrating the 1-week mark of the integration with a small dinner gathering. Maya, Eleanor, Daniel, and a few other key team members who've been with Reclaim since the early days. As I ride the elevator down, I reflect on the journey that brought me here. Nathan walking out had felt like an ending, the collapse of the future I'd imagined. Instead, it became the beginning of something far more meaningful than I could have envisioned. The lobby is quiet at this hour, just a security guard who nods as I pass. Outside, I spot Daniel leaning against a sleek black car, scrolling through his phone. He looks up as the door opens, his face lighting up in a way that still catches me off guard. The expression of someone genuinely happy to see me, not for what I can provide or achieve, but simply for being myself. "Long day?" he asks, opening the car door. "Interesting one," I reply, sliding inside. "Nathan came to see me." Daniel raises an eyebrow as he joins me in the back seat. "Should I be concerned?" I laugh softly. "Hardly. He wanted to run a marketing strategy by me. It was actually quite good. Trying to prove his worth to the new boss? Maybe." I shrug. "Or maybe just trying to find his place in the new reality, like everyone else." Daniel takes my hand, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. "And how are you finding your place in this new reality? CEO of a major financial services company, industry, disruptor, Forbes 30 under 40 honoree?" I lean against his shoulder, watching Seattle pass by through rain-streaked windows. Honestly, it feels like exactly where I'm supposed to be. I turn to look at him. Not because I acquired Nathan's company, though I won't pretend there isn't some poetic justice there, but because every step brought me closer to creating something meaningful. From personal catastrophe to helping millions, Daniel muses. That's quite a trajectory. The debt was just the beginning, I say quietly. The real journey was discovering who I am when everything I thought defined me was stripped away. The car pulls up to Canlis, one of Seattle's most prestigious restaurants, where Maya has arranged a private dining room for our celebration. Through the windows, I can see our small group already gathered, champagne glasses in hand. These people, who believed in me, invested in my vision, worked alongside me through countless late nights and early pivots, they're the real victory. Ready? Daniel asks, squeezing my hand gently. I nod, feeling a sense of completion that has nothing to do with balance sheets or acquisition terms. More than ready. As we enter the restaurant, Maya spots us immediately, raising her glass. There she is, the woman who turned $97,000 of debt into a financial empire. The room erupts in applause and cheers. Eleanor winks at me from across the table, a proud gleam in her eye. 3 years ago, she saw potential in a broken accountant, sitting in her office trying not to cry while discussing bankruptcy options. Now that potential has been realized beyond what either of us could have imagined. I accept a glass of champagne, feeling the weight of the moment, not as a culmination, but as a milestone in an ongoing journey. Tomorrow will bring new challenges, integrating corporate cultures, expanding services, navigating the complex dynamics with Nathan and other summit executives. But tonight is for celebration, for acknowledging how far we've come. A toast, Maya announces, raising her glass higher. To Olivia Parker, who took lemons and didn't just make lemonade, she built a multinational beverage conglomerate. Laughter. Ripples through the room, warm and genuine. To reclaim, Daniel adds, his eyes meeting mine, and to reclaiming what matters most. To all of you, I counter, looking around at these faces that have become my chosen family, because none of this would exist without each person in this room believing it could. As glasses clink and conversation flows, I find myself in a moment of quiet reflection. The victory isn't in Nathan's shocked expression when I walked into that boardroom, satisfying though it was. The victory is in every step that led me there. Every late-night coding session, every investor pitch, every user whose financial life improved because of what we built. Nathan had been right about one thing. Some people are meant to build empires. He just never understood that empires come in many forms, and the most powerful ones are built not on ego or ambition alone, but on the transformation of personal pain into collective possibility. 3.5 years ago, a man walked out and left me with nothing but debt. Today, I've reclaimed not just financial stability, but something far more valuable: the knowledge that our greatest setbacks often contain the seeds of our most meaningful contributions. And that, more than any acquisition or corner office, is the true measure of success. 6 months into the integration of Summit Capital and Reclaim Financial, unexpected challenges emerged that no business plan could have anticipated. The technological transition was proceeding smoothly. Our systems were elegantly designed for precisely this kind of absorption. But corporate culture proved more resistant to change. Summit's old guard, steeped in traditional banking practices and hierarchical power structures, viewed Reclaim's collaborative approach with thinly veiled skepticism. They attended our innovation workshops with arms crossed and expressions that ranged from bored to hostile. They submitted the required reports, but withheld the insights that existed beyond spreadsheets. "They're waiting us out," Maya observed during our weekly executive meeting. "They think this is some tech bubble phase that will collapse, and they'll reclaim their territory." She smiled at her inadvertent pun. "No offense to the company name." "None taken," I replied, studying the employee satisfaction metrics on the screen before us. The data showed a clear divide. Reclaim employees reported high engagement and optimism about the integration, while Summit employees were increasingly disaffected. We need to bridge this gap before it widens further. Eleanor, who had taken a formal advisory role with the merged company, tapped her pen thoughtfully against her notepad. The issue isn't the integration itself, it's the narrative around it. Summit employees see this as a takeover, not a merger of complementary strengths. I nodded, recognizing the wisdom in her assessment. So we need to change the narrative. And the fastest way to change a narrative, Daniel added from his position near the window, is to change who's telling the story. All eyes turned to him. Explain, I prompted, feeling a familiar flutter in my chest that had nothing to do with business strategy. Daniel moved to the table, placing his hands on the back of an empty chair. Right now, the story is being told by the resistant old guard. But what about Nathan? A heavy silence fell over the room. Nathan? Maya's voice carried a note of incredulity. The ex-husband who left Olivia with crippling debt. That Nathan? Daniel nodded. The very same. Who also happens to be a respected leader within Summit, the architect of that marketing bridge strategy that's outperforming projections. And, most importantly, someone who has visibly adapted to the new structure. I leaned back in my chair, considering the suggestion. You want Nathan to become our integration ambassador. Think about it, Daniel continued, warming to his idea. If Summit employees see one of their own not just accepting the change but thriving within it, they might reconsider their resistance. And Nathan has been surprisingly collaborative these past months. He wasn't wrong. After our coffee shop conversation, Nathan had maintained a strictly professional approach to our new working relationship. His marketing bridge, connecting debt recovery clients to wealth-building services as they improved their financial standing, had become a signature initiative of the combined company. He attended all integration meetings with constructive contributions and had even defended Reclaim's methodologies to skeptical Summit colleagues. It could work, Eleanor conceded, but it would require significant trust on both sides. Maya looked at me, concern evident in her expression. Liv, you don't have to do this. There are other approaches we could take. I appreciated her protectiveness, but I recognized the strategic value of Daniel's suggestion. Let's explore it, I decided. I'll speak with Nathan myself. The meeting continued, covering other integration challenges, but my mind kept returning to the idea of bringing Nathan further into the fold. Not as my ex-husband, but as a strategic partner in building the combined company's future. The irony wasn't lost on me, once again entrusting him with something important, but this time, with clear eyes and firm boundaries. I found him in Summit's executive lounge later that afternoon, reviewing documents with a focus that had always been one of his more admirable qualities. He looked up as I approached, surprise flickering across his features. Olivia, he said, setting aside his work. This is unexpected. You rarely venture into the Summit side of operations. A valid observation, I acknowledged, taking the seat across from him. And perhaps part of the problem we need to address. His eyebrows rose. We have a problem? A cultural integration challenge, I clarified. Your colleagues are resistant to change. My former colleagues, he corrected, a small but significant distinction. And yes, I've noticed. I studied him for a moment, looking for signs of the old Nathan, the dismissive confidence, the subtle condescension. But his expression remained open, attentive. We're considering a more proactive approach to bridging the cultural divide, I explained. And you've been suggested as someone who could help lead that effort. He sat back, genuine surprise crossing his face. Me? I would have thought I'd be the last person you'd want as the face of anything in your company. Our company. Corrected. And this isn't about personal history. It's about organizational psychology. Summit employees see you adapting to the integration. If you were to take a more visible role in championing the combined vision, it might accelerate acceptance. Nathan was quiet for a long moment, considering the proposition. You're asking me to help convince the old guard that Reclaim's approach is the future. I'm asking you to help them see that it doesn't have to be us versus them, I clarified. That we're building something stronger together than either company could achieve alone. He smiled slightly. You want me to be a cultural translator? Essentially. And you trust me to do this? After everything? The question hung between us, layered with our complicated history. I chose my words carefully. I trust your business acumen and your understanding of Summit's corporate psychology. I recognize your contributions these past 6 months. As for personal trust, I shrugged lightly. That's not relevant to this particular initiative. He nodded, accepting this professional boundary. Fair enough. What exactly would this role entail? We spent the next hour outlining a strategy where Nathan would lead a series of integration workshops, highlighting success stories and addressing concerns directly. He would work with both Reclaim and Summit team members to identify pain points and develop collaborative solutions. Essentially, he would become the bridge he had designed in his marketing strategy. I'll need resources, he said, as our impromptu meeting concluded. And some authority to implement changes. You'll have both, I assured him. Work with Maya to define the parameters. She'll ensure you have what you need. As I stood to leave, Nathan asked the question I'd been expecting. Why me, Olivia? Really? There must be dozens of Summit executives who would be less complicated choices. I paused, considering how much truth to share. Because you understand both worlds, I said finally. You know what drives Summit's old guard? The prestige, the tradition, the hierarchy. But you've also embraced Reclaim's innovation and adaptability. You've experienced the mindset shift that we're asking others to make. What I didn't add was the observation Daniel had made privately, that Nathan's visible acceptance of my leadership carried symbolic weight that transcended corporate politics. If the man who once deemed me lacking in ambition could adapt to my vision, anyone could. Nathan seemed to understand the unspoken. I'll do my best, he said simply. For the company. For the company, I echoed, and we left it at that. The Nathan Collins Integration Initiative, as Maya somewhat sardonically dubbed it, launched the following week. To everyone's surprise, perhaps Nathan's most of all, it began showing results almost immediately. His first workshop drew skeptical attendance, but by the third session, participation had nearly doubled. Summit employees who had been resistance leaders started bringing constructive feedback instead of complaints. They feel heard, Nathan explained during our bi-weekly executive review. Many had legitimate concerns about losing Summit's core, strengths in the rush to digitize everything. Once they understood we were preserving what works while enhancing what doesn't, the conversation shifted. Maya, who had been his most vocal skeptic, nodded reluctantly. The employee satisfaction metrics from the Summit side have improved 12% in just 3 weeks. Whatever you're doing, it's working. Nathan directed his response to me. I'm just applying what I've learned from watching you these past months. Clear communication, genuine listening, and follow through on commitments. The compliment was unexpected, and I felt a momentary discomfort at receiving professional validation from the man who had once dismissed my capabilities so thoroughly. But I acknowledged his comment with a professional nod. Keep up the good work. The faster we can unify our culture, the sooner we can focus entirely on market expansion. As Nathan's initiative gained momentum, another opportunity emerged that would test our newly functional professional relationship. Westbrook Financial, a mid-sized regional bank with strong community ties across the Pacific Northwest, was seeking a digital transformation partner. Their CEO had approached us directly after seeing the early success of the Summit Reclaim integration. They want to maintain their community banking identity while developing fintech capabilities, I explained to our executive team. It's a perfect opportunity to deploy our white label platform without an acquisition. And who would lead the Westbrook engagement? Daniel asked, though his glance toward Nathan suggested he already had someone in mind. I followed his gaze. I was thinking Nathan might be the right fit. He understands traditional banking perspectives, but can translate our digital capabilities effectively. Nathan looked genuinely startled. You're putting me in charge of a major client relationship? Unless you have reservations about your ability to handle it, I replied evenly. A spark of the old competitive Nathan flashed in his eyes. No, reservations. I'm just surprised you'd trust me with something this significant. It's not about trust, I clarified, though that wasn't entirely true. It's about putting the right skills against the right challenge. Your work on the integration has demonstrated your ability to bridge traditional and innovative approaches. That's exactly what Westbrook needs. He accepted the assignment with a professional nod, but I caught the hint of genuine pleasure in his expression. Not the smug satisfaction I remembered from our marriage when he'd secured some advantage, but something more substantial. The validation of being valued for actual contribution rather than personal connection. The Westbrook project became Nathan's primary focus over the next 2 months. He assembled a team that balanced Reclaim's technical expertise with Summit's client relationship experience. Their approach was methodical yet innovative, preserving Westbrook's community-centered identity while upgrading their technological infrastructure. I kept my distance, allowing him the autonomy to prove himself, but I reviewed all major deliverables and attended key client meetings. During one such meeting, I observed an interaction that further shifted my perception of the man I had once married. Westbrook's CFO, a traditionalist in his late 50s, had expressed concerns about customer adoption of digital banking tools in their older demographic. Rather than dismissing the concern or defaulting to technical jargon, Nathan shared stories from Summit clients who had overcome similar hesitations. The key isn't forcing technology on people who value personal relationships, he explained. It's using technology to enhance those relationships. Your branch managers won't have less contact with valued customers. They'll have more meaningful interactions because the routine transactions won't require their time. The CFO nodded thoughtfully. That's the first explanation that's made sense to me. Everyone else just tells us the world is going digital, whether we like it or not. The world is going digital, Nathan acknowledged. But how we experience that shift isn't predetermined. We can design it to strengthen what matters most to your community. I caught his eye across the conference table, offering a small nod of approval. He had captured the essence of what I'd been trying to articulate since founding Reclaim, that financial technology should serve human needs, not replace human connections. After the meeting, as we waited for our car service, an awkward silence fell between us. We had developed a functional professional relationship, but moments of genuine alignment still felt unfamiliar. You handled that well, I said finally. The approach with Westbrook's CFO. Nathan nodded, his gaze fixed on the Seattle skyline. I learned it from you, actually. The way you talk about Reclaim's mission, it's never about technology for technology's sake. It's about solving real problems for real people. I glanced at him, surprised by the observation. I didn't realize you'd been paying that much attention. He met my gaze directly. I've been paying attention to everything, Olivia. How could I not? You've built something remarkable, and now I'm part of it. I'd be a fool not to learn everything I can from how you operate. The sincerity in his voice caught me off guard. This wasn't flattery or manipulation, strategies I'd grown familiar with during our marriage. This was genuine professional respect. Thank you, I said simply. That means something, coming from you. Our car arrived, saving us from further personal conversation. But something had shifted between us, a new layer of professional respect that made our daily interactions less strained, more productive. The Westbrook project proceeded ahead of schedule, with Nathan providing weekly updates that showcased both progress and challenges with transparent honesty. When technical limitations required adjustments to the implementation timeline, he addressed them directly rather than obscuring difficulties. When the client expressed concerns, he brought them immediately to our attention, rather than attempting to manage perceptions. "He's not the same person," Maya commented one evening as we reviewed the latest Westbrook metrics in my office. "The Nathan I've heard about for years would have hidden problems until they became crises, then blamed circumstances beyond his control." I nodded, recognizing the truth in her observation. "People can change." "Some people," she corrected, giving me a pointed look. "Under the right circumstances, like having their ex-wife become their boss." I laughed despite myself. "I doubt that's a widely applicable growth strategy." "Maybe not," she conceded, "but it's working in this particular case. The question is, what does it mean for you?" I raised an eyebrow. "Mean for me?" "Emotionally," she clarified. "You built this company partly as a response to what he did. Now he's becoming an asset to that very company. That's got to be complicated." I considered her question, looking out at the Seattle evening skyline as lights flickered on across the city. "It's less complicated than you might think," I said finally. "Nathan walking out was the catalyst, but it's not the foundation. Reclaim became something far bigger than a response to personal betrayal." Maya nodded. "Still, seeing him adapt, contribute, even thrive in the company you built is satisfying," I acknowledged. "But not in the way I might have imagined. It's not about vindication anymore. It's about creating something so compelling that even the person who underestimated me most can recognize its value." Before Maya could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Daniel. "Dinner still on?" "Reservation in 30 minutes. I smiled, gathering my things. "Speaking of complicated situations, I have a date to get to." Maya grinned. "With your extremely attractive corporate counsel, who has been not so secretly in love with you since you first consulted him about incorporating Reclaim?" "The very same," I confirmed, feeling a warmth that had nothing to do with business success. "And I'd rather not keep him waiting." She made a shooing motion. "Go. Live your rom-com ending. The Empire will still be here tomorrow." I laughed, but her words stayed with me as I rode the elevator down to the lobby where Daniel waited. Was this a rom-com ending? Triumphant career woman also gets the guy? Or was it something more nuanced, more reflective of the complex reality of building a life from the ashes of disappointment? Daniel looked up from his phone as I approached, his face lighting up in that way that still made my heart skip. After the coldness of Nathan's eventual indifference during our marriage, Daniel's warm consistency felt like a revelation. "Successful day?" he asked, taking my hand as we walked toward his car. "Interesting one," I replied. "Nathan's exceeding expectations on the Westbrook project." Daniel nodded, unsurprised. "He's motivated to prove himself, not just to you, but to himself. Success is powerful rehabilitation." I glanced at him. "You seem remarkably understanding about my ex-husband's redemption arc." He smiled, opening the car door for me. "I'm secure enough in what we have to appreciate a good character development subplot." As we drove to dinner, I found myself reflecting on the unexpected evolution of both my professional and personal lives. 3.5 years ago, I'd been drowning in debt and despair, certain that my future had collapsed along with my marriage. Now I was leading a company valued at over $500 million, in a relationship with someone who supported my ambition without feeling threatened by it, and, most surprisingly, working productively with the very man whose abandonment had initiated this transformation. "Penny, for your thoughts?" Daniel asked as we waited at a traffic light. "I was just thinking about narrative arcs," I said. "How rarely they follow predictable patterns in real life." He glanced at me, intrigued. Such as the fact that Nathan has become an asset to reclaim, rather than remaining the villain in my origin story. Or that I found you because I needed legal counsel to protect myself from financial ruin. Daniel chuckled. The meet-cute of bankruptcy consultation. Hallmark should consider it for their next holiday special. I laughed, grateful for his ability to find humor in our unconventional beginning. It's just strange sometimes, how things unfold. If he hadn't left me with that debt. "You might never have founded Reclaim," Daniel finished, "and we might never have met." "Exactly." He reached for my hand. "I'm not saying I'm grateful." "He hurt you, but I am grateful for where the path led." "So am I admitted softly. Dinner was at a small Italian restaurant overlooking Elliott Bay, far from the corporate dining spots where Summit executives conducted business lunches. The maitre d' greeted Daniel by name. He'd brought me here for our first real date, after months of professional consultations had gradually evolved into something more personal. Over handmade pasta and a bottle of Barolo, we deliberately avoided work talk, focusing instead on the book Daniel was reading, the documentary series Ideal. Been watching between meetings, and tentative plans for a weekend getaway to the San Juan Islands. It was refreshingly normal, a reminder that no matter how extraordinary my professional journey had become, there was value in ordinary moments of connection. As we finished our meal, Daniel reached across the table to take my hand, his expression turning slightly more serious. "I've been thinking about something." Something in his tone made my heart rate accelerate. "Oh?" "We've been together for almost 2 years now, and they've been extraordinary years. Watching you build Reclaim, being part of that journey, seeing you transform an industry." I raised an eyebrow. "This sounds suspiciously like a performance review." He laughed. "Sorry. What I'm trying to say is..." He paused, seeming uncharacteristically nervous. "I know your experience with marriage wasn't exactly encouraging." My breath caught. "Daniel, just hear me out," he said gently. "I'm not proposing right now, but I want you to know that I am thinking about our future, and when you're ready, if you're ever ready, I'd like to be more than your corporate counsel and boyfriend." The warmth that spread through me was both surprising and completely natural. With Nathan, marriage had felt like entering his world, adapting to his vision. With Daniel, the possibility felt like an extension of the partnership we'd already built. Equal, supportive, mutually enhancing. "I appreciate you not ambushing me with a public proposal," I said, squeezing his hand. "And I appreciate you understanding why I might be cautious." "Of course," he nodded. "No pressure, no timeline. Just wanted you to know where I stand." I smiled, feeling a certainty that had nothing to do with spreadsheets or strategic planning. "I'm not ready yet," I admitted. "But I'm closer than I ever thought I'd be again. And it's because you've never asked me to be less to make room for you to be more." His eyes softened. "I would never want you to be anything less than exactly who you are. Your success doesn't diminish me. It inspires me." We let the conversation shift to lighter topics as we shared dessert, but a new awareness hummed between us. The possibility of a future that included both professional fulfillment and personal happiness, without sacrificing either. Later that night, as I stood on my apartment balcony watching moonlight ripple across Lake Union, I thought about the divergent paths that had led from my kitchen table 3.5 years ago. The debt that had seemed like an ending had become a beginning. The betrayal that had broken my heart had ultimately freed me to build something more meaningful than a marriage based on one-sided support. My phone buzzed with an email notification. Nathan, sending the latest Westbrook implementation report well ahead of deadline. The subject line read simply, "Thought you'd want to see this progress sooner rather than later." I opened the attachment, scanning the detailed metrics and thoughtful analysis. The work was excellent, thorough, insightful, forward-thinking. At the end of the document, he'd added a personal note. "Olivia, working on this project has made me reflect on what I walked away from 3 years ago. Not just our marriage, but the chance to be part of building something meaningful rather than just chasing status. I'm grateful for the second chance to get it right professionally, even if other bridges remain permanently burned. Thank you for seeing potential in me that I'm only now discovering in myself. Nathan." I closed the email without responding immediately, unsure what to say to this unexpected vulnerability. Part of me, a small, lingering part, felt a vindication that I hadn't fully acknowledged needing. But the larger part recognized something more significant, that the true victory wasn't in proving Nathan wrong about me, but in creating something that allowed both of us to become better versions of ourselves. I would respond tomorrow with professional acknowledgement of his excellent work. Tonight, however, I wanted to sit with the realization that sometimes the most powerful form of reclamation isn't taking back what was lost, but creating something entirely new from what remains. The debt that Nathan left me with had become the seed of not just financial recovery, but a complete reimagining of what success could look like. For me, for the people Reclaim served, and even, ironically, for Nathan himself. Some debts, it seemed, yielded unexpected returns when invested in the right future. 1 year after the acquisition, Reclaim Summit celebrated with a company-wide gathering at the Seattle Art Museum. The Grand Marble Hall was transformed with interactive displays showcasing client success stories, from Summit's high-net-worth investors who had embraced our digital tools to Reclaim's debt recovery clients who had graduated to wealth-building services. Behind the polished presentations and champagne toasts lay 12 months of intense transformation, not just for our companies, but for everyone involved. I stood near a large window overlooking Elliott Bay, watching employees from both legacy organizations mingling comfortably. The cultural divide that had seemed so insurmountable 6 months ago had gradually dissolved as teams collaborated on real projects with tangible results. Nathan's integration initiative had evolved from structured workshops to organic cross-pollination, with Summit veterans mentoring Reclaim newcomers on regulatory complexities, while Reclaim's digital natives guided their traditional counterparts through technological transformation. Quite a view, isn't it? Eleanor appeared beside me, elegant as always in a tailored navy suit. "And I don't mean the water." I smiled, following her gaze to the crowded room. Hard to believe these were practically warring factions a year ago. "Not that hard," she replied. "You built something worth believing in. People eventually recognize value, even when it comes in unfamiliar packaging." "We built something," I corrected her. "I wouldn't be standing here if you hadn't taken a chance on that desperate woman in your office 3.5 years ago." Eleanor waved away the comment. "I provided capital and connections. You provided vision and execution. Speaking of execution." She nodded toward the center of the room, where Nathan was deep in conversation with Westbrook's CEO and several members of our development team. "Your ex-husband has exceeded expectations." The observation was accurate if understated. The Westbrook implementation had become our showcase client success, with regional banks across the country now approaching us for similar partnerships. Nathan had emerged as the ideal ambassador for these traditional institutions, fluent in their concerns while conversant in our solutions. His division was now the fastest-growing segment of our business. "He's found his place," I acknowledged. "It turns out he's exceptionally good at translating between banking traditionalists and fintech innovators. Rather fitting, Eleanor observed with her characteristic incisiveness, considering he now lives between those worlds himself. Before I could respond, Maya approached with a champagne flute in hand. Hate to interrupt, but the Forbes reporter is here for your interview. Should I stall them, or are you ready? I took a steadying breath. After maintaining a low profile for years, I'd finally agreed to a feature story about Reclaim's journey from startup to industry transformer. I'm ready. Just remember our agreement. The focus stays on the company mission, not personal drama. Maya nodded, already emphasized that point 3 times. But you know how journalists are. They love a human interest angle. Then we'll give them the human interest that matters, I said firmly. The stories of people who've reclaimed their financial futures, not tabloid narratives about my marriage. The interview took place in a small gallery adjacent to the main hall, surrounded by contemporary artwork that reflected Seattle's innovative spirit. The reporter, Abigail Chen from Forbes's FinTech beat, was refreshingly focused on substantive questions about our business model, integration challenges, and future vision, until she wasn't. I have to ask about the personal dimension, she said, after 40 minutes of discussing governance structures and AI implementation. It's not every day that someone acquires their ex-husband's company. That must have been satisfying. I maintained a neutral expression, having anticipated this inevitable pivot. The acquisition was based entirely on business logic. Summit Capital had regulatory approvals and client relationships that complemented our technological capabilities. The fact that my ex-husband happened to work there was incidental to the strategic rationale. Abigail's skeptical expression made it clear she wasn't buying the corporate line. With respect, Ms. Parker, you were left with substantial debt when your marriage ended. 3 years later, you're the CEO of a company that acquired the firm where your ex-husband built his career. That's quite a reversal of fortune. I considered deflecting again, but decided on a different approach. Let me tell you what's actually interesting about that situation, Ms. Chen. It's not about revenge or vindication. It's about how personal crisis can clarify purpose. Her pen hovered over her notebook. Go on. When my marriage ended and I found myself drowning in debt, I had 2 options: declare bankruptcy or find a solution. The solution I created for myself turned out to be valuable for millions of others in similar situations. That's the story worth telling: how financial trauma can become the catalyst for financial innovation. And your ex-husband? How does he fit into this innovation narrative? I glanced through the doorway to the main hall, where Nathan was, now speaking with Daniel, their conversation appearing surprisingly cordial. He's found a role that leverages his understanding of traditional banking within our more innovative framework. It's been unexpectedly productive. So you work together amicably now. The skepticism in her voice was palpable. We work together professionally, I clarified. The personal history is irrelevant to our current business relationship. Abigail smiled slightly. That's very diplomatic. It's very accurate, I countered. The most worthwhile aspect of this entire journey isn't proving someone wrong about you. It's building something that matters regardless of what anyone thinks of you personally. The reporter studied me for a moment, then nodded. Fair enough. Let's talk about Reclaim's expansion plans for the coming year. I relaxed slightly as the conversation returned to safer territory. We discussed our growing partnerships with community banks, plans for international expansion, and the regulatory frameworks we were navigating. By the time the interview concluded, I felt reasonably confident that the resulting article would focus more on Reclaim's business impact than on my personal history. As I rejoined the celebration, Daniel found me by the refreshment table. How did the interview go? About as expected, I replied, accepting the sparkling water he offered. 80% business strategy, 20% fishing for ex-husband drama. He smiled. And how did you handle the 20%? Redirected to what actually matters, the impact we're creating for our users. I took a sip of water, surveying the room. How was your conversation with Nathan? Looked surprisingly civil from a distance. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Jealous? I laughed, nudging his shoulder lightly. Curious. My corporate counsel and my ex-husband in deep conversation isn't exactly a scenario I anticipated when I woke up this morning. We were discussing the regulatory framework for the Canadian expansion, Daniel explained. He has some useful insights from his previous work at Summit. And yes, it was entirely civil. Professional, even. I studied his expression. You actually respect him. Daniel considered this, then nodded slowly. Professionally, yes. He's good at what he does now, and he seems genuinely committed to the company's success. He paused, meeting my gaze directly. This doesn't mean I've forgotten what he did to you, but people can evolve, especially when properly motivated. By properly motivated, you mean having their ex-wife as their boss? I asked wryly. That's certainly one powerful motivation, he conceded with a smile. But I think it's more than that. He seems genuinely engaged by the work itself, by the impact we're creating. Before I could respond, Maya appeared at my elbow, slightly breathless. Emergency in the tech corner. The live demo for the Westbrook showcase just crashed, and the CIO of First Western Credit Union is asking very pointed questions about system reliability. I exchanged a quick glance with Daniel. Duty calls. Save me a dance for later? He nodded, squeezing my hand briefly. Go save the tech kingdom. The crisis turned out to be manageable, a connectivity issue rather than a fundamental system failure. But resolving it required coordinated effort from both technical teams and executive reassurance for the concerned potential client. Nathan arrived at the demo station moments after I did, immediately grasping the situation and engaging the visiting CIO in conversation while our engineers addressed the technical glitch. The beauty of this platform isn't that it never experiences issues, he explained smoothly to the skeptical executive. It's how quickly it identifies, isolates, and resolves them. Traditional banking systems often mask problems until they cascade into major failures. Our approach prioritizes transparency and rapid response. I watched from a few feet away, impressed by his intuitive grasp of both the client's concerns and our system's strengths. When the demo resumed functioning 5 minutes later, he seamlessly transitioned to showcasing the features most relevant to the credit union's needs, transforming a potential embarrassment into a compelling demonstration of our platform's resilience. After the CIO departed, with a follow-up meeting scheduled for the following week, Nathan approached me with a slightly apologetic expression. Sorry for jumping in without checking first. I saw the situation unfolding and thought I could help. Buffer while the tech team worked their magic. No apology necessary, I assured him. Your approach was exactly right. We turned a glitch into a selling point. He nodded, looking relieved. This partnership model is gaining serious traction. First Western would be our 5th credit union this quarter if they sign. When they sign, I corrected, confident in our ability to close the deal. Your division is outperforming projections by a significant margin. A complicated expression crossed his face, pride mixed with something more reflective. It's strange to think about sometimes. When I left our marriage, I was chasing what I thought was the fastest path to success. The prestigious title, the corner office, the traditional markers of achievement. He gestured around us. And now I'm finding the greatest success of my career in the very company that emerged from the wreckage of that decision. The frank acknowledgement caught me off guard. Nathan and I had established a functional professional relationship, but we rarely referenced our personal history so directly. Life has a certain poetry sometimes, I said finally. He smiled slightly, more like irony in this case. A server passed with champagne and he took 2 glasses, offering one to me. Would it be inappropriate to propose a toast? Colleague, so. To colleague, not. You know. I accepted the glass cautiously. That depends on the toast. He raised his glass slightly. To unexpected journeys and where they lead us. Simple, appropriate, and surprisingly thoughtful. I tapped my glass against his. To unexpected journeys. As we sipped our champagne, Maya caught my eye from across the room, raising an eyebrow in silent question. I gave her a small nod to indicate everything was fine. She'd been my protective buffer for so long that any extended interaction between Nathan and me still triggered her concern. Your friend still doesn't trust me, Nathan observed, following my glance. Can't blame her. Maya believes in second chances, I replied. She just believes in verification even more. He laughed softly. Fair enough. I should get back to the Westbrook team anyway. Their CEO is introducing me to some colleagues from Oregon Community Bank. As he moved away, I found myself reflecting on how thoroughly our dynamic had transformed. The man who had once dismissed my financial acumen as cute was now thriving within the company I had built, applying his talents toward advancing my vision rather than subordinating me to his. The remainder of the evening passed in a blur of conversations, introductions, and impromptu strategy discussions disguised as social chit-chat. By 11, the crowd had thinned considerably, with only the executive team and a few key partners remaining for a final toast. I stood at the center of our loose circle, raising my glass to the assembled group. 1 year ago, many people questioned whether this integration could succeed. Traditional banking and fintech innovation were considered fundamentally incompatible approaches. What we've proven is that the strongest solutions emerge not from choosing one path over another, but from thoughtfully combining complementary strengths. Nods of agreement rippled through the group. Tonight we're celebrating not just financial metrics, though those have certainly exceeded projections, but a more significant achievement, creating a financial services model that serves people at every stage of their journey. From debt recovery to wealth building, from basic money management to sophisticated investment strategies, we're making financial empowerment accessible to everyone, not just the privileged few. I caught Eleanor's approving smile from across the circle. This success belongs to every person in this room and the teams you lead. Your willingness to embrace change, to learn from different perspectives, to collaborate across traditional boundaries. That's what transformed two separate companies into one unified force for financial innovation. As glasses clinked and conversations resumed, Daniel appeared at my side. Impressive speech for something impromptu. I smiled. Who says it was impromptu? I've been thinking about what to say at this milestone for weeks. Always prepared, he noted with admiration. One of your many admirable qualities. The museum staff began discreetly indicating that our extended reservation was concluding. As the remaining guests gathered their belongings and made their way toward the exits, Daniel took my hand. What do you say we take a walk along the waterfront before heading home? It's a rare clear night. The suggestion was appealing after hours in the crowded museum. Let me just check with Maya about tomorrow's schedule. I found her speaking with Eleanor near the coat check. Daniel and I are going to take a walk before heading home. Anything urgent for first thing tomorrow? Maya shook her head. Nothing that can't wait until 9. The Forbes interviewer wants to schedule a follow-up call, but I told her it needs to go through me first. Perfect. And Maya, thank you for everything tonight. The event was flawless. She grinned. Hardly flawless, but the glitches made for better stories, especially that demo rescue with Nathan. Very dramatic. Very effective, Eleanor corrected. That's the true test of a partnership, how it functions under pressure. She patted my arm. Go enjoy your walk. You've earned a moment of peace after the year you've had. Daniel and I strolled along the waterfront, the night air crisp and clear. Seattle's skyline reflected in the dark water of Elliott Bay, lights twinkling like earthbound stars. We walked in comfortable silence for a while, both processing the significance of the evening. "You know what I was thinking during your toast?" Daniel said finally. "What's that?" "How far you've come from that first day in my office. You walked in with a folder of debt documents and divorce papers, shaking slightly, but determined to rebuild. Now you're leading a financial revolution. That's changing how people experience money." I squeezed his hand. "I didn't do it alone." "No," he agreed. "But it was your vision, your resilience that made it possible. I'm just grateful I got to witness it, and that you let me be part of the journey." We stopped at a viewpoint overlooking the water. In the distance, ferries crossed the sound, their lights moving slowly against the darkness. "I've been thinking about what you said at dinner a few months ago," I said quietly, "about our future." His expression remained carefully neutral, though I felt his hand tighten slightly around mine. "Oh? I think I'm ready to consider more possibilities now. Not immediately, but soon." The smile that spread across his face held such genuine joy that my remaining hesitations seemed to dissolve. This wasn't Nathan's calculated satisfaction when getting his way or securing an advantage. This was pure, uncomplicated happiness at the prospect of building something together. "I can work with soon," he said, pulling me gently closer. "I'm a patient man." "Not too patient, I hope," I replied, wrapping my arms around his waist. "We're not getting any younger." He laughed, the sound mingling with the distant foghorns and lapping waves. "Olivia Parker, was that an invitation to propose sometime in the not-too-distant future?" It was an acknowledgement that when the right proposal comes, I might be ready to say yes. I looked up at him, allowing myself to imagine a future where professional fulfillment and personal happiness weren't mutually exclusive. And that's not something I thought I'd ever feel again. He kissed me then, softly at first, then with a depth of feeling that made the busy port city around us fade into insignificance. When we finally pulled apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "Whatever timeline works for you, I'm here. No pressure, no rush." "I know," I said, and that simple certainty felt like the most precious gift. The knowledge that this relationship operated on mutual support rather than one-sided sacrifice. We continued our walk, discussing lighter topics as we made our way back toward the parking garage. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. The Forbes follow-up, the first Western proposal, the Canadian expansion planning. But tonight was for appreciating how far we'd come and allowing ourselves to imagine what might lie ahead. As I drove home later that evening, I found myself taking a route that passed by the small apartment I'd rented after leaving my marriage, the place where I'd started coding the first version of Reclaim's platform at a secondhand desk, surrounded by unpaid bills and determination. The building looked smaller than I remembered, dwarfed by newer development in the rapidly changing neighborhood. I hadn't planned this detour, but something about the day, celebrating one milestone while contemplating another, made me want to acknowledge where the journey had begun. I pulled over briefly, looking up at the windows of what had been Unit 3B. The lights were on. Someone else's life was unfolding in the space where I'd rebuilt mine from scratch. My phone buzzed with a text from Maya. A little birdie told me, "Daniel might be planning something special soon. Should I start researching wedding venues? Or is that premature?" I smiled, typing back, "Definitely premature." "And by little birdie, do you mean Daniel himself?" Her response came seconds later. "My sources shall remain confidential. But hypothetically speaking, if one were planning a significant life event in the next 3 to 6 months, what season would one prefer?" I shook my head, amused by her transparent fishing. Hypothetically speaking, one would prefer that her COO focus on next quarter's projections rather than her personal life. But if pressed, one might suggest early fall. 3 dots appeared then. Noted. For entirely unrelated business planning purposes, of course. As I pulled away from the curb, continuing toward my lakefront home, I felt a sense of completion. Not an ending, but the closing of one chapter and the opening of another. The debt that had once defined my daily existence had been transformed into something valuable beyond measure. A purpose, a company, a community of people working toward financial empowerment. And perhaps most surprisingly, that debt had ultimately led me to a relationship built on mutual respect rather than unbalanced sacrifice. Daniel had entered my life because of financial crisis, but he'd remained because of genuine connection, supporting my vision without seeking to diminish it for his own comfort. When I reached home, I found a package waiting at my door, a small, elegantly wrapped box with a card that read simply, "To new beginnings. D." Inside was a delicate silver bracelet with a single charm, a phoenix rising from flames, crafted in platinum and tiny rubies. It wasn't an engagement ring. Daniel was too respectful of my timeline for that. But it was a promise, a symbol of transformation, of beauty emerging from destruction. I slipped it onto my wrist, admiring how the stones caught the light. Then I sent him a message. "It's perfect. Thank you for seeing the phoenix when I was still in the ashes." His reply came moments later. "You were never ashes, Olivia. Just gathering your strength to fly." I smiled, feeling the weight of the day's emotions settle into something solid and sustaining. From the despair of abandonment and debt to the triumph of building something meaningful, from professional success to personal renewal. The journey had been neither straight nor simple, but standing here now, I wouldn't change a single step of the path that had led me to this moment. Tomorrow would bring new challenges in expanding Reclaim's reach, integrating Summit's resources, and navigating the complex dynamics of our growing company. Nathan would continue finding his place within the organization he'd once dismissed, perhaps even rising to new leadership roles if his performance warranted it. The Forbes article would cast our story into the public eye, bringing scrutiny and opportunity in equal measure. But tonight, looking out over Lake Union from my home office, the space where I'd refined Reclaim's platform from a personal solution to a global innovation, I allowed myself a moment of pure appreciation. Not just for what I'd built from the wreckage of my marriage, but for who I'd become in the process. Someone who turned debt into determination, betrayal into breakthrough, and personal pain into collective possibility. The phoenix on my wrist caught the lamplight, sending tiny reflections dancing across the wall. New beginnings, indeed. And this time, I was ready for them, not as someone's supportive partner or invisible backbone, but as the architect of my own extraordinary future. 2 years after the acquisition, I stood at the podium of the National Financial Innovation Summit, accepting the Transformative Leadership Award as flashbulbs popped and applause filled the grand ballroom. The journey from debt-ridden divorcee to recognized industry innovator felt surreal, like watching someone else's life unfold through a cinematic lens. Financial services have traditionally catered to those who already have resources, I said into the microphone, the weight of the crystal award solid in my hand. What makes Reclaim Summit different is our commitment to serving people at every stage of their financial journey, from crisis to prosperity. As I continued my acceptance speech, I caught sight of familiar faces in the audience. Eleanor, elegant and proud, seated beside Maya, who was recording the moment on her phone despite my protests. Daniel in the front row, the platinum band on, his left hand catching the light, a match to the one I'd worn for 6 months now. And several rows back, Nathan, applauding with genuine appreciation, his new fiancée Rachel beside him. Life had evolved in ways none of us could have anticipated on that rainy night when he walked out, leaving me with nothing but debt and shattered confidence. The debt had become the catalyst for Reclaim. The shattered confidence had been rebuilt into something stronger, more authentic. And Nathan surprisingly had found his own path to growth within the company that rose from the ashes of our marriage. After the ceremony, champagne flowed as industry leaders and innovators mingled in the hotel's opulent reception hall. I moved through conversations about regulatory frameworks, artificial intelligence advancements, and financial inclusion initiatives with the ease that comes from genuine expertise rather than performative confidence. "The woman of the hour," Daniel said, appearing at my side with fresh drinks. "How does it feel to be officially recognized as a financial revolutionary?" I accepted the sparkling water with a smile, like someone might realize there's been a mistake at any moment. He laughed. "Imposter syndrome persists even after building a multi-billion-dollar company? I find that strangely reassuring about human nature." "It keeps me grounded," I replied, sipping my water. "The moment I start believing my own press is the moment innovation stops." We were joined by Eleanor, who had mentored me through every stage of Reclaim's growth. Now in her 70s, she had reduced her client load, but maintained an active advisory role with our company. "Congratulations again," she said warmly. "Though I'm not sure why everyone seems so surprised. I knew you'd transform the industry the moment you wrote, 'I want to create safety for people who've been left with nothing,' in my office." I smiled at the memory. "You saw potential where I only saw crisis. I still don't know why you took that chance on me." "Because trauma creates clarity when properly channeled," she replied simply. "And you were remarkably clear about what needed to change in financial services, even while your personal finances were in chaos." Our conversation was interrupted by the approach of Abigail Chen, the Forbes journalist whose feature on Reclaim had elevated our profile 18 months earlier. Her article, "From Personal Debt to Financial Revolution: How Olivia Parker's Crisis Created an Industry Disruptor," had struck the perfect balance between human interest and substantive analysis of our business model. "Ms. Parker, congratulations on the award," she said, extending her hand. "Any chance I might get an exclusive on your next innovation? My sources tell me Reclaim Summit is developing something game-changing in the retirement space." I laughed, appreciating her directness. "Your sources are well-informed but premature. We'll be making announcements next quarter if all goes according to plan." "Worth a try," she said with a good-natured shrug. "By the way, your ex-husband declined to comment for my follow-up piece on corporate reinvention. Said his contribution to Reclaim's story was peripheral at best." This surprised me. Nathan had become an integral part of our executive team, heading our financial institutions partnership division with remarkable success. His perspective would have been valuable in any article about the company's evolution. "That doesn't sound like Nathan," I said carefully. "He's been instrumental in several key initiatives." Abigail nodded. "That's what makes his modesty interesting. He specifically said, 'This is Olivia's vision. I'm just grateful to contribute to it.' Not exactly the ego-driven executive from your early marriage, based on what I've pieced together." After she moved on to other conversations, Daniel raised an eyebrow. "Nathan declining publicity? That's character development I wouldn't have predicted." "People can surprise you," I replied, my gaze finding Nathan across the room. He was deep, in conversation with the CEO of a community banking association, animated and engaged as he explained something with characteristic intensity. Later that evening, as the reception wound down, Nathan approached as I was gathering my things. "Congratulations on the award," he said, genuine warmth in his voice. "Well-deserved recognition." "Thank you," I replied. "I hear you declined to be interviewed for Abigail's follow-up piece." He looked slightly embarrassed. "Ah, she mentioned that." "Yes, I thought it was more appropriate for you or Maya to represent the company vision." "You're part of the executive team, Nathan. Your insights would have been valuable." He shifted, uncharacteristically hesitant. "Here's the thing, Olivia. I'm proud of my work with Reclaim Summit. The partnership division is doing incredible things, but I'm aware that my role in your life story is complicated. I studied him, noting how much he'd changed from the man who had walked out of our marriage seeking status and recognition above all else. That's surprisingly self-aware. He smiled ruefully. Personal growth courtesy of having your ex-wife as your boss. Turns out it's quite the accelerated development program. We both laughed, the moment remarkable for its ease and authenticity. Rachel seems lovely, I said, nodding toward his fiancée, who was chatting with Maya near the exit. How did you meet? At the Westbrook implementation, actually. She's their digital transformation officer. His expression softened. She challenged everything I proposed, made me justify every recommendation. It was. He paused, searching for the right word, humbling, in the best way. I smiled, recognizing the value in finding a partner who was an equal rather than a support system. I'm happy for you, Nathan, truly. He nodded, accepting this. And I'm happy for you and Daniel. He's a good man, the kind who appreciates your strength rather than feeling threatened by it. This insight from the man who had once felt diminished by my ambition carried significant weight. Yes, he is. A comfortable silence fell between us. Former spouses, current colleagues, people whose lives had taken unexpected turns only to reconnect in a transformed context. You know what's ironic? Nathan said finally. If I hadn't left you with that, dead if I'd been a better husband and partner, neither of us would be where we are now. That's one way to look at it, I acknowledged. Though I wouldn't recommend abandoning spouses with crushing debt as a general personal development strategy. He laughed, shaking his head. God, no. I got incredibly lucky that my worst mistake led to something positive, at least professionally. Most people's worst mistakes just compound. The difference is what you build from the wreckage, I said quietly. For both of us. As the evening concluded and we all moved toward waiting cars, I found myself reflecting on the strange symmetry of our journeys. Nathan and I had begun as a traditional couple with conventional aspirations. His career, my support, the expected trajectory toward material success. The collapse of that model had freed us both to discover more authentic paths. My leadership of a transformative company, his discovery of purpose beyond status, and both of us finding partners who truly saw and valued us. During the ride back to our waterfront home, Daniel laced his fingers through mine. Penny for your thoughts? Just reflecting on unexpected journeys, I replied. How the worst moment of my life led to everything I value now. He squeezed my hand. The Phoenix effect. I smiled, touching the charm bracelet I still wore daily. The Phoenix now joined by several other meaningful symbols marking milestones in our relationship. Exactly. When we arrived home, I kicked off my heels and moved to the living room. Windows gazing out at the moonlight playing across Lake Union. Daniel joined me, wrapping his arms around my waist from behind. So, financial revolutionary, he murmured into my hair. What's next? I leaned back against him, considering the question. Reclaim Summit was now valued at over $4 billion, with operations across 3 continents. Our debt recovery platform had helped millions reclaim financial stability, while our partnership model was transforming traditional banking from within. We'd achieved more than I could have imagined when coding that first rudimentary system at my kitchen table. Honestly, I'm thinking about legacy, I admitted. Not just continuing to grow the company, but ensuring its mission outlasts any individual leader, including me. He nodded, understanding immediately. A foundation, perhaps? Or an educational initiative? Both, eventually, I said, turning to face him. But first, I'm thinking about leadership development. Finding and nurturing people with the right combination of technical knowledge and human empathy to carry this vision forward. Daniel studied me with the attentive gaze that had made me feel truly seen from our first meeting. "You're considering succession planning. That's forward thinking, especially for a founder still in her prime." "Not immediate succession," I clarified, "but intentional development of the next generation. People who understand that financial services should serve people, not just profit from them." He nodded, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "The true measure of leadership, building something that transcends you." As we stood there, planning future chapters of a story that had begun in financial devastation, I felt a profound sense of completion. Not because the journey was over, far from it, but because its meaning had crystallized with perfect clarity. The debt that Nathan had left me with had become the catalyst for creating something far more valuable. A company that helped others transform their own financial crises into stepping stones toward security and prosperity. The personal had become universal. The individual pain expanded into collective possibility, and in that transformation lay the deepest satisfaction of all. Knowing that my worst moment had ultimately led to helping millions of others survive their own financial breaking points. That the story that began with husband left me with nothing, but debt had evolved into, and that's how I learned to build everything. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.